Hello, board game brothers and sisters, and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and Gamefound over the next week. If you're new here, we do this every single week, going over all the upcoming campaigns. So if you want to stay up to date, this is the place to be. But before we get started, I do like to go over some news and announcemements that I just found out about over the past week, except I don't really have too much for you, so I'm just going to jump into my usual protocols here, which is to just let you know about Alex over at Boardgame Co. if you haven't checked him out already, because him and I do work together to keep track of all these upcoming campaigns. If you like these sort of videos, keeping you up to date with what's to come every single week, you'll definitely want to check his videos out because he posts a video at the start of each month, letting you know of the heavy hitters for that month. He also posts a ton of other content as well, going into reviews and playthroughs and just general commentary on the industry. So if you're interested in any of that, he does a great job. You'll definitely want to check him out and subscribe if you do like his content. I do also want to make a quick mention to Zilla Blitz, because Michael over at Zilla Blitz works really hard to keep track of all the upcoming historical war games, and this is a genre that I don't dive into very deeply, so if that is an area that you're interested in, there's a bunch of different crowdfunding platforms that I don't even look into that Zilla Blitz will have you covered, and he also posts a video each month letting you know of those new releases and what you can look forward to. That's pretty much it for an intro. A pretty quick one this week, but we do got quite a few games to cover, so let's check them out. And the first campaign we have here launches on July 22nd, and this one is called Aetherstream Leviathan. And this one is not really a board game, it's more of a aerial war game, except this is a aerial war game in space. In this game, players are going to be choosing a pilot and a ship, and then you're going to be combining their stats to determine your maneuverability, your durability, your shield, and your firepower at different ranges. There's also a bunch of stats that are going to help you command, pilot, and manage your ship, and all these different stats are going to be used to create dice pools, and the more dice that you have, the more chances that you have successes depending on the action that you're trying to perform. This is a game where players are going to be taking turns moving and attacking with their ships, and I don't have a picture of it, but there's going to be an associated grid linked with each of the different types of ships, and you're going to be using that to determine how easy it is to get you to certain areas out on the board. Depending on where you want to move relative to your ship, that grid is going to tell you what sort of stats you need to get there, and the stats that you have are going to determine how difficult it is to make that maneuver. When you attack, you're going to be building up a pool of D10 dice, and these are all going to be based on your various stats, and you could get additional bonuses depending on strategic positioning against your opponent. Any dice that you roll of a 7 or higher are going to represent an accurate shot towards your opponent's ship, but if you manage to roll any of your dice as 10s, then those are going to be exploding dice, which will allow you to roll an additional die. Your opponent still does have the opportunity to evade some of these shots, and they're going to be rolling dice depending on their stats in order to avoid damage. Each success that they make is going to be negating one of your dice. And this is where a really neat mechanism comes into play, because all the remaining dice that weren't avoided are going to be re-rolled, and then the value of those dice determines the type of hit that you made with that shot, with each of them having some different effects. And if this one does sound interesting to you, you can go ahead and check it out, and I will have it linked in the description down below. And launch on July 23rd, we have EPOS, a Gentes game, and this one is a civilization game that also incorporates a little bit of area control and some really interesting action selection. And this one is my own personal pick of the week, because I really do like the way that the action selection works in this game, but I also do like the way that you train and grow your civilization, and I think all of it is tied together really well, and this looks like a game that's a ton of fun. Each player is going to be competing as a different civilization with their own different strengths and weaknesses, and the game actually offers a bunch of different scenarios with different goals and rules, and you can actually play it as a campaign as well, but you can also just play this as a regular game, just as a one-off scenario. The game plays over 6 rounds, and players are going to be spending time in order to perform their actions, and this is the really interesting part of the game for me, but it's also a really nice thematic tie-in, considering that this is a civilization game. Players have this time track at the top of their board with these rightmost spaces blocked off at the beginning of the game, but there are different ways that you can remove those tokens, opening up more time that you can spend on a round. And as you take various actions, you're going to be filling up the different slots there with the different actions that you're taking, as well as any additional hourglass tokens required by that action that represent additional time that that action takes. What's really interesting about this is that any actions that require at least 2 units of time, you can actually put 2 individual hourglass tokens there, or instead you can choose to just put 1 token but flip it to its opposite side with the double hourglass, which you can see here. The difference between these two options is that the single hourglasses will both be removed at the end of the round, but if you choose to use a double hourglass token, then that token is going to be remaining on your board into the following round, taking up an additional slot. This means that you'll want to do it this way if an extra action now is more valuable to you than an action later. Most of the actions you perform are going to be coming from the main board, and there's going to be a bunch of different tokens that players are essentially going to be drafting, with some of them being more valuable than others and giving you cheaper access to those various actions. If you choose one of those actions, you're going to be taking that token and putting it into the time slot, as well as any additional time tokens like I mentioned before. And then you'll also be paying whatever costs come with that action, with some of those tokens being cheaper than others, and those ones will most definitely be drafted first. So there is a bit of a race for players to try and get the actions that they want. Most of the available actions do also have an infinite version of it that's printed out on the board that can be taken at any time, but of course this one is going to be the most costly version of that action, and players are only going to want to do that if they absolutely have to. But these different actions are going to allow you to do all sorts of different things, like gain different amounts of money, push you up the turn order track, or even gain you these really nice cards that you'll have to build in order to gain their benefits. But when you do, they can grant you with instant and ongoing effects, like gaining you additional victory points, money, or even removing one of these tokens from your own personal player board, or even granting you with your own personal action location that you can use on future turns. Another nice thing about building these cards is that they do have these different icons on them, and if you're able to match those icons with other cards that you've already built, then you're going to be getting as many victory points as icons that you're able to match. This is just a nice additional bonus that's going to be directing you as to which cards you might want to draft into your hand. You do want to be a little bit careful with this, because if you do draft too many cards into your hand, then you're going to be hit with a penalty at the end of the round, costing you time in the following round. Of course, another action you can perform is to actually build these cards, and when you do, like I said, you're going to be putting it into your own personal tableau, but in order to build this card, you need to meet the requirements of the card, and each card is going to have some amount of population that you need for each of the different types of citizens. I did mention before that this game does have a little bit of area control, and there is an area of the board that represents a map where players are going to be gaining influence in the different regions. I'm saying this now because having influence in a particular region could also be a requirement on those cards. In order to determine whether or not you meet the number of citizens requirements, you're going to be checking on your own personal player board, and you're going to have 3 rows of citizens with 2 citizens in each row. Citizens on the left-hand side of the board are going to be moving right each time that you increase their population, but then the citizens on the right are going to be moving left anytime that you increase their population. As you might have noticed, this means that each of those 2 citizens in each row are competing for space on that board. I really like this because it can create really nice decisions in the game where you're going to have to decide which of those 2 citizens you want to specialize in. And of course, moving these citizens along the board to increase their population is one of the actions available out on the main board. But the final main action that you can perform is to place and optionally move any of your influence tokens out on the map portion of the board. The way this works is that an action will allow you to place a certain amount of influence tokens on a region. It might have some requirements with which regions you can place it in, but then however many that you're able to put in a region, you also get that many movement points in order to move those influence tokens however you like. A lot of times you can only place these markers in a region where you already have influence, so using this movement to your advantage can allow you to get influence in regions that you don't have already. But once you get 6 of your influence tokens into a single location out on the map, you'll be able to swap those out in order to build a city there, and that's going to gain you the control of that location for the rest of the game, and then you'll also be gaining the benefit, plus the benefit of any other cities that you already control in that region instantly. The rounds continue like this until the end of the game, with some of the rounds also allowing all players to free up some spaces on their time tracker, but then at the end of the game it's going to be the player with the most victory points that wins, and if you're interested to check this one out, you can go ahead and find it in the description down below, and of course follow along to get notified once it launches. Also on the 23rd, we have Rift Zone Contact, which is a game that I thought was launching last week, so I did already film footage for this one. I did catch that it wasn't launching before I edited last week's video, so I haven't aired this one yet, but I'll go ahead and roll that previously filmed footage now so you can check it out. And I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly because I don't spend quite as much time on the miniature war games. But this one is called Rift Zone Contact, and this is a miniature Starship Trooper-esque war game where you're going to be playing as humans versus bugs. Players are going to be taking turns activating just one of their units at a time until all of their units have been activated, and whenever you activate a unit, you can move it and then spend any of its action points. The movement will differ per unit as well as the action points available, but the interesting thing about the action points is you can spend them to attack, and the accuracy and damage is based on the distance, and damage type and armor can be a factor as well, and there can also be some special effects. But then you can also spend your action points on special abilities for extra movement, to repair damage, or even add defensive capabilities. But any unused action points actually roll over into the next round, or they can be used as defensive action points that you can use anytime that you're attacked out of your turn. One thing that makes this one very different from a lot of other war games is that each of the units actually have an RFID chip in them, and you'll be able to scan them with your app in order to get their stats. And this is also going to track your units as you upgrade them and make different changes and configurations across multiple games. So you're not going to be using the app too heavily within a game, but it is used in order to track the progress of the individual units. Also launched on the 23rd, we have Take the Throne, which is a competitive card game where players are trying to take the throne and then maintain control over it, because you're going to be earning victory points for every round that you're able to do that. Each player in this game has an identical deck of cards except for one player who's going to be playing as the monarch, and the only difference other than the cards that they get to play with is that they also get to start with the throne. Each turn, players are going to be simultaneously choosing one card from their hands and then placing it face down in front of them. After all the players have done that, you're going to be revealing one card at a time, moving clockwise from the monarch. Some of the cards played might have an instant action as soon as it's revealed, while others might occur after all the cards are revealed. But what's really interesting about these cards is that many of them have different outcomes depending on what the other players do. This could boost or negate certain cards, or even cancel out multiple cards completely. I think this concept works really well in this game because since all the players do have the same set of cards, you can try to negotiate and try to make a plan with the other players in order to take out whoever has the throne currently. But then any one of you that might have agreed to go with that plan could betray all the others in order to do something a little bit different and a little bit more advantageous to them. Of course, whoever has the throne can also hear what you're planning and can try to use that information in order to decide which cards they want to play. But then there are other cards that do allow you to manipulate the cards out in play, and they could allow you to peek at the cards and then swap them if you choose to, or even swap without peeking, or even discard a player's card of your choice if you think that they can't be trusted. I think the table talk in this game is really what's going to make it a ton of fun, and if this one does sound interesting to you, you can go ahead and check it out, and I will have it linked down below. Also on the 23rd, we have a new expansion for the game CastleScape, and this is going to be the Gates and Guilds expansion, and I'll get into what this expansion adds in a second here. But if you're not familiar with the original game, this is a deck-building tactical area control game. All players start with the same basic starting deck, and you're going to be drawing a hand of cards each and every round, and then using those cards to perform your various actions. The different actions will allow you to place units of your color anywhere out on the board, but more importantly, they're going to allow you to build the castle walls. And the whole goal here is that you're trying to close off different sections, because whoever has the most units within a section once it's closed is going to be gaining a victory point for each of the units within that section. You'll also get 2 victory points if any of those walls have one of your units on top of them, and the way that you do that is by first placing a unit, and then on a following round, building a wall underneath that unit, pushing it up on top of it. But like I said, this one is a deck building game, which means that there are going to be cards that grant you different amounts of gold, and you'll be able to spend that gold with other actions in order to purchase more powerful cards. And what I like about this is that this will allow you to move more quickly when it comes to either placing out your units or placing out those walls, which can give you more control over different aspects of the game, allowing you to specialize in a certain area or instead to create a deck that's a little bit more balanced. Another really cool aspect of this game is that some of the cards are a little bit more nefarious than others, and there's going to be certain negative consequences if you choose to use those cards. These consequences will come in the form of infamy or corruption that you're going to be keeping track of on your own personal player board, and if you have too much of either of those, it could cause you to remove units from the board each round, making it a little bit more difficult for you to gain those victory points and control those regions. But the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins, and you can get additional victory points by completing different private and public goals. The new Gates and Guilds expansion is going to be introducing a bunch of new cards that you can just mix into the game, but it's also going to be adding the new variable power cards, which is going to add some asymmetry, giving each of the players a different special ability. But the big change with this expansion is that it's going to be introducing a new type of structure that you'll be able to build throughout the game, which is, of course, the castle gates. The way these work is that there's going to be specific locations where players are going to be trying to build these gates, and players are going to be trying to race towards those locations and be the first to do it, because each one of those that you build are going to be granting you with some sort of special ability that you'll be able to use throughout the game. If that sounds interesting to you, I will have this campaign linked in the description down below. Also launching on the 23rd, we have Survive Alive, and in this game, players are going to be trying to survive during a zombie apocalypse, but this game is nothing like I was expecting it to be, because most games with this theme tend to be cooperative and tend to use basic action selection, usually categorized as a Ameritrash style of board game. But this one is actually completely different than that. First of all, this one is competitive, and secondly, this one is actually a draw and write. The way the game works is that each player is going to have their own personal base that they're going to be trying to build up and protect throughout the game. Each player does have a shroud that's going to be keeping their base secret from all the other players, but there will be a shared community board in the center of the table that each player is going to be sending their survivors out to go and scavenge and hopefully find even more survivors to bring back to their base. At the start of the game, there's going to be a bunch of different survivor cards put out on display, and players are going to be taking turns drafting a survivor into their base until each player has 2 survivors. Each of the survivors can have different special abilities, different weapons, as well as a different amount of resources that they are going to be granting you. The game then plays over a series of rounds where at the start of each round, players will be able to spend their resources in order to build structures on their base, and this will allow them to increase their defenses, improve morale, or even gain different benefits when it comes to healing or feeding your different characters. But another option you have at this point is to send out any or all of your survivors to go try and scavenge different locations out on the main community board. This is also going to cost a certain amount of resources depending on the number of survivors you're sending and the locations that you're trying to visit. Anytime you do this, you're going to be drawing a scavenge card that can grant you with all sorts of different benefits like victory points or even a new survivor you can bring back to the base along with any of the resources that they have. The catch here is that each of these cards will also have a certain amount of zombies that you're going to have to fight, and there are 3 different decks to choose from when you draw one of these cards, each of 3 different difficulties. In order to determine whether or not your scavenge was a success, you're going to be adding up your character's total defense by combining the defense values of each of their weapons and then comparing it to the total number of zombies. If you have a defense equal or greater than the amount of zombies, then the scavenge was a success, but if not, each of your survivors is going to be gaining a wound token, and if any survivor ever gains 3 of those, then they are no longer among the living and you're going to have to discard that card. But resources are hard to come by during a zombie apocalypse, and the safest place for those resources are of course in your belly, so any resources that aren't used at the end of the round are going to be discarded back into the bag. Not only that, but at the end of every round, all the players' bases are going to be attacked by hordes of zombies, and the way that this works is that an increasing amount of event cards are going to be drawn, telling you how many zombies and which side of your base they're going to be attacking. In order to defend from these attacks, you're going to be adding up the total defenses on that side of your base and then comparing it to the number of zombies. The nice thing here is that any of your survivors that you left at the base and didn't take out to the community board, they can actually be assigned to any side of your base, adding to that side's total defense. If the attack still gets through, then each of your survivors at the base are going to be gaining a wound token, but if you didn't leave any survivors at your base, or if you don't have any left, then instead the zombies are going to be attacking your base, destroying some of those structures that you spent your resources building. At the end of the round, it's the player with the most victory points that wins the game, and you're going to be gaining victory points for successful scavenges, maintaining a strong base, killing zombies, and for each survivor that you have at the end of the game, with them gaining you more victory points depending on how healthy and high morale they are. And then, of course, there are some shared goals that players will be racing for in order to get those additional victory points. If this one sounds interesting to you, you can go ahead and check it out, and I will have it linked in the description down below. Also launching on the 23rd, we have Verdun, and I know this one does look like a historical war game, but this one is actually a trick-taking game, although it does have a World War I theme. But this one is a 1v1 or 2v2 trick-taking game where if you're playing as pairs, you're going to be sitting across from your partner. The goal of this game is to try and destroy your opponent's base while protecting your own, and players are going to be setting up their bases in secret at the start of the game. The way this works is that each team is going to have a number of tokens, with some of those tokens representing barricades and the other tokens representing different bonuses that will be granted to your opponent if they're able to break through that barricade and reveal that token. Each player is dealt their starting hand of cards, and then the game plays over a series of rounds where each player is going to be choosing a card from their hand to play into the trick, starting with the attacking player. After all the cards have been played, you're going to be adding your value to the value of your partner's card and then comparing it against the total of your opponent's. Whoever has the highest total value is going to be winning that trick. And if that's the attacking team, then they're going to be able to flip the barricade token associated with the current round. Then the value of that token is going to be added to the defender's side. And if the attacker's strength is still higher than that, then they'll also be able to flip the reward token. Not only that, but the losing side's going to have to discard their highest card played into that trick, and then the winning side's going to have to discard their lowest card played into that trick. After that, you check the remaining cards, and whichever player has the highest value at that point is going to be gaining a special card that they'll be able to add into their hand and use in a future trick. The game continues like this over the 6 rounds, and then the team that has the most victory points at that point wins the game, and you're going to be gaining victory points for flipping your opponent's tokens and keeping yours unflipped, but you're also going to be losing points based on the cards that you lost, with each of those cards having a different cost. I really like the design of this one and how players are going to have multiple things to consider when deciding which card to put into a trick, because not only are you trying to win that trick, but you're also trying not to lose cards that have a high cost. And then you're also trying to get the highest card out so that you can win that special card and add it to your hand. If all of this sounds interesting to you, you can follow along and you can find a link to the campaign in the description down below. Also launch on the 23rd, we have Jurassic Feud, which is a 1v1 or team v team dexterity catapult style game where each player is going to be building up their own fort with a bunch of their different units on it, and then shooting at their opponent's fort from across the table, trying to eliminate all of their units. Players will be building their forts and placing their warriors however they like, they just have to stay within the borders of their playmat. The game then plays over a series of rounds where players are going to be taking turns launching their catapult, trying to destroy their opponent's fort and take out their warriors. You can also choose to play this game with the optional action deck, which gives players a bunch of additional actions that they can choose to play on their turn by playing one of those cards. And you're going to be starting with 3 of those in your hand, then you're going to be gaining another one each time that one of your warriors is defeated. The different cards can allow you to do all sorts of different things, like rebuild a section of your fort, move your warriors around within your playmat, or even gain an extra shot on your turn, or copy the power of a card that's already been played, just to name a few. Each player is going to have 2 different dino-themed launchers to choose from, with one of them being more like a catapult and the other being more like a crossbow. There's also a few different expansions that you can include as well, like a volcano, a hydra, and a Viking boat that can all shoot boulders in different ways. They can also act as obstacles in the center of the table. There's also going to be a big surprise as well, and if you want to check that out, you'll have to visit the campaign page yourself, but this looks like a great game to play with the kids, and if it looks like one that might be a hit for your family, you can go ahead and check it out, and don't forget that you can click that Notify Me button to get notified once it launches. Also on the 23rd, we have Legacy at Sea, which is a historically accurate pirate-themed game where players are going to be trying to build up their legacy and be the most renowned at the end of the game. Players are each going to be playing as a unique captain that has their own special ability and unique skills at the start of the game, but you'll be able to build up those skills and customize your ship as the game goes on. The game plays over a series of rounds, and each round you're going to be revealing a story card that's going to have different events that are going to modify the friendliness of the different islands, as well as the supply and demand. On your turn, you can move your ship up to the number of movement points that it has, and then you're going to be taking an action depending on the space that you decide to stop on. If you stop on a sail space, you're going to be able to choose a sail card to draw, and these cards can present you with different islands, merchant ships, or open ocean, which can grant you different types of resources, rewards, or tests. But the catch here is that each of those cards are going to be paired with an encounter card that you're also going to have to take, and those could present you with some choices or challenges, or even throw you into a fight. The cool thing about a fight is that you'll be able to choose whether you want to fight using your cannons, your crew, or your maneuverability. You're going to be rolling your dice and comparing your stats to your opponents in order to determine whether it is a success or a failure. Some of the choices or actions that you decide to take could also increase your animosity, so that's something to also consider because that's going to be limiting the different islands and ports that you'll be able to visit. But if you do decide to visit one of those ports, you'll be able to sell or buy different resources or crew or ship upgrades, but you can also gain prospect cards, which are short or long-term goals, which will grant you rewards if you're able to fulfill them. And of course, you can also bribe the authorities at the islands in order to reduce your animosity. But the game continues like this, and the player with the most renown at the end of the game wins. And if you want to check this one out, I will have a link to their webpage in the description down below, which will allow you to sign up and get notified once this campaign launches. Also on the 23rd, we have a campaign that's not for a board game, but it is for something to help protect your games, because this is the campaign for the 5th season of Sleeve Kings, which creates some of the best sleeves you can find on the market. And I do recommend sleeving your games if they're games that are either really expensive, really difficult to find, or even if it's just a game that you play a lot, because your cards will get destroyed from excessive shuffling over time. Well, that or the many unfortunate accidents and acts of God that I have seen in my career of board gaming. But this campaign is going to be offering you sleeves in all sorts of different thicknesses and different sizes to make sure that it can cover any type of game and card size that you have. If you're not sure which type or how many sleeves you need for a particular game, they do have some instructions here for you to figure that out really easily. And I never noticed before, but I guess on BGG there is a Sleeve It button underneath the description of the game that you can go ahead and click, and it'll give you all those different details. If you're looking to get a lot of sleeves, you'll definitely want to check this out, because it's these campaigns where they offer these sleeves at their best prices. There's going to be a bunch of different bundles to choose from, but you will be able to mix and match and choose which sleeves you want to include within that bundle. There's also a few games offered in this campaign if you are interested in those, including Escape from the Asylum, Catapult Castle, and Bamboo Bash. And these are all games that I have covered in the past, so I will roll that previous footage for you in a second here. But if you are interested in this campaign, you can go ahead and check it out. I'll have it linked in the description down below, and of course you can click that Notify Me button in order to follow along with the campaign and get notified once it launches. And this is a Jenga-style dexterity game where players are competing to collect the most bamboo bark. This game is set up by stacking cylindrical bamboo stems that have plastic bamboo bark on the outside of them. And then you place a cute panda cub on top. On a player's turn, they can use a fake panda paw on a stick to attempt to smack the bamboo bark off the center of the bamboo stems, and players gain points for having the most bark pieces at the end of the game. Some of these pieces have a number of leaves depicted on them, and the player with the most leaves who did not knock off the panda gets bonus points. All players who knock off center stems will lose points, and the player with the most points at the end of the game wins. We have Catapult Castle, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 30 minutes to play. And this is a dexterity game that has some pretty interesting components. There are a ton of towers that players are going to be using to build up their castle, and then they're also going to be using a miniature catapult and a shared pool of boulders that players are going to be launching at each other's castles. Each player is going to be starting the game by taking one of these land boards and setting up a few of these towers on the different squares on this board to set up their castle. And they're also going to be taking a deck of cards which represents their characters and the characters' abilities. The different land boards interconnect, so they're going to be in the center of the table, and then players are going to be launching different boulders at their opponent's castles. And players will take turns doing this, but if you miss, you end your turn. But if you land the boulder inside of your opponent's tower, then you're going to be taking that tower for yourself and adding it to your castle. If all 4 spaces on your map are already filled, then you're going to be taking one of these cards, placing it in the top of one of these towers, and then stacking the next tower on top of that tower. Anytime that your tower gets shot at, you get to draw another card from your deck into your hand, giving you some more special abilities. And any boulders that land inside of a tower stay there for the entirety of the game, because once all the boulders run out, that triggers the end of the game. And these cards have some really fun special abilities. They allow you to shoot multiple boulders on your turn, or they allow you to throw boulders with your hand rather than using the catapult. Or they can also do things like this one here with the reinforced roof, where you're going to place it on top of one of your towers, and it essentially acts as a free hit for one of your towers. So if a boulder ever hits a tower with that card on it, it's going to absorb that hit and prevent the boulder from going inside the tower. Really simple game to learn and teach, which is great for kids, and the player that has the most tower pieces on their board by the time all the boulders runs out wins the game. We have Escape from the Asylum Deluxe Edition, and this plays 1 to 6 players and takes about 60 minutes to play. And Escape from Asylum is a cooperative escape room experience. The game is divided into 2 parts, and each part is a collection of 5 stories. Each story has players assume the role of characters trying to escape the North Oaks Asylum by solving puzzles and making life-altering decisions. Each character has their own backstory that players will discover throughout the game, and stories also intertwine, adding a fun aspect of discovering extra details and Easter eggs from one story to the next. Each story takes about an hour to play, so you're getting about 10 hours of gameplay here. And this game has already been released, so there's a ton of reviews on the web already if you need some help deciding if this is something that you'll enjoy. The deluxe edition here will be Kickstarter exclusive, so if this is something you're interested in, you can find out more in the description below. And also launching on the 24th, we have Ascension Legends, and this one is a standalone game, but it can be mixed with the other Ascension decks if you want to include it with any of the content that you already own. And the way this game works is that you're going to be starting with a basic deck, then each turn you're going to be drawing 5 cards into your hand. You can play as many of those cards that you can, and they're going to be granting you money that you can use to buy new cards in order to add those cards into your deck, or instead they can grant you power, which you can use to defeat monsters to earn victory points. There's also cards that can have all sorts of different special abilities, doing things like allowing you to draw additional cards into your hand. This version of the game is going to have a main board in the center of the table that's going to have 4 different tracks on it that I'll come back to in a second here. But there's also going to be a bunch of cards out on display. There's going to be 3 cards that are always on display and always available to buy or defeat. Then there's going to be 6 cards below those that are going to be swapped out and changed anytime that a player buys or defeats one of those cards. But it's these 4 tracks on the left-hand side known as the legendary tracks, which add all the excitement into this version of the game, because each of those is going to be associated with a different faction, and there's going to be a different legendary character that players can earn favor with at the top of each of those tracks. Every time you gain a card of a particular faction, you're going to be moving up that faction's track, and it's going to be earning you with special bonuses and actions every time you move up 3 spaces. There's a total of 12 spaces in each track, and if you ever reach the end of any of them, it's going to be granting you with a really powerful bonus action, which is going to allow you to either gain or defeat any card of your choice out on display that matches that faction. The other reason that you might want to move up these tracks is that they can also affect the power of various cards, with some of the cards giving you different actions or bonuses depending on where you are on the track of a certain faction. The player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game, and I believe the game ends once the pool of victory points runs out. There's going to be a different amount depending on player count, but if this one does sound interesting to you, you can check it out. I will have it linked down below. Also on the 24th, we have the next campaign from Game Toppers, which creates all sorts of board game accessories and table accessories to help make your board gaming experience a little bit nicer. And they do make some really nice products. I actually have a Game Toppers playmat on my table right now, and I absolutely love this one. There's going to be a bunch offered on the campaign, I'm sure. And if you do own a Game Topper table, they're also providing different narrow playmats that you can actually put into the armrests of your table, adding even more artwork and customization for you to choose from. It looks like this campaign is going to be more focused on those, as well as their various terrain packs. And if you do want to check any of that out, you can find the campaign down below, and there's going to be a lot more than what I've mentioned in this video. And launching on the 26th, we have Goblin Plunder, and this one is a competitive game where players are trying to collect the most valuable cards and the most valuable sets of cards in order to earn the most victory points at the end of the game. On a turn, you can either draft a card from the supply, steal a card from another player, or stash any of your cards safely in your own personal hoard, protecting them from everyone else in the game. Each card is split into 2, with each side having a different icon, and I believe the side that's face up is the active side of the card. And another action you can do is just to rotate a card in your hand to get the opposite side upward. But this is a game that also features a sort of automated player, because at the end of each round, the most valuable card that wasn't drafted is going to be going to the dragon. If the dragon doesn't have any cards that it can take, then that's going to be triggering the final round, and then it's the player or the dragon with the best hoard of treasure that's going to be winning the game. And if you are interested in this one, you can check it out. This is for a print and play version of the game, but you can find it linked down below. And finally, launching on the 27th, we have 1, 2, 3 Cheese, which is a campaign that I did cover in the past, but it got pushed back until now. So I did already cover this one, and I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And this is a game all about a heist gone wrong. Players are caught red-handed with a whole bunch of different cheeses, and players are trying to escape with the least amount of cheese in their possession, because whoever has the least amount of points at the end of this game is the one that wins the game. The way this game plays is that each player is going to be dealt a hand of 6 cards at the start of the game, and then each player is going to be choosing one of their cards to put face up in front of them, starting their very own stash. And like I said, you want to have the least amount of points in this game, so you want to keep your stash as small as possible because each card in your stash is going to be worth 1 point. But even worse, any cards left in your hand at the end of the round are going to be worth 2 points. And the end of the round is triggered as soon as one person's able to get rid of all their cards, so you want to be the first person to do that. But there is one more thing to be aware of, because there's going to be one special card that's going to be worth a lot more than all the others if you happen to get stuck with it at the end of the round. And the way that this is determined is that you're just going to be drawing one card randomly from the main deck and then revealing it to all players, and whichever type of cheese that is, it's going to be worth the amount of points as depicted on that card. Once all that's done, players are just going to be taking turns performing one action on their turn in order to play cards from their hand to one of the stashes out in front of them. You can play to any of your opponent's stash, but you can also play to your own as well. But like I said, you want to have the least points in this game, which means keeping your stash as small as possible, but also trying to get rid of all your cards first. So you really want to be strategic with how you play cards where, because there are certain rules to where cards can be placed. You can play a card from your hand matching the color of any of the stashes as long as your card is of higher value, or instead you can break that rule by playing 2 cards of the same color on top of any stash also matching that color, disregarding any of the values. But you can also play a run of cards on top of any other color, even if it doesn't match. But if you can't do any of those, the last option is to draw a card from the top of the deck. Some cards do also have some special effects, and there is also a wild that can be any color or any number, giving you a little bit more flexibility if you are lucky enough to get that card. But a big reason for wanting to play cards into your own stash is because after the first round, you're going to be taking all the cards from your stash, and then you're going to be repeating the same process. So if you do have certain cards in your stash and you're able to create runs of cards in order to get them out of your hand really quickly in the second round, that might be something to be taken advantage of. The game does also have a few other modes of play, so if this one does sound interesting to you, definitely check it out, and I will have links to the campaign in the description below. And that's everything I got for you this week, but don't leave yet because we still got a few awesome giveaways to announce. And the first one is for a pledge for Luthier. And this is a huge Euro game that's doing fantastic. This is coming from the same team that brought you the game Distilled, but this one plays quite a bit differently, where players are trying to compose different works of music, build different instruments, and repair instruments for their different clients. The game uses a combination of worker placement with blind bidding, where players are going to be putting tokens out on different worker placement locations, with each location offering you some sort of card or resource depending on what you want to take. Catch here is that every player has the same numbered tokens to choose from, and you're going to be putting those face down at the different locations, and whoever has the highest value at a location is going to be getting first dibs, but you may also need to put a certain amount in order to get certain bonuses or particular actions at that location. Each of your clients are going to have a few different requirements that you're going to need to complete if you're to fulfill that card, but they're not going to wait forever, and if their patience runs out, you're going to lose that client. But the nice thing about this is that anytime that you complete even one of their requirements, it's going to be resetting their patience marker back to the beginning. This can buy you a little bit more time, which is a good thing, because if you do manage to complete that card, you're going to be sliding it behind your player sheet, and that's going to be gaining you a special ability for the rest of the game. And I do just want to thank the publisher here, because not only are they donating an all-in pledge, they're also offering it worldwide, which means anyone is free to enter in on this giveaway. And this all-in pledge is going to be getting you a lot of game with a lot of really nice upgrades. To enter this giveaway, all you got to do is leave a comment down below, and you can say anything that you want. But if you're looking for something in particular, maybe you could let us know of an instrument that you play, or maybe if you could play any instrument, which instrument would you pick? For myself, I can pretty much play any instrument badly, but I think what I'm the best at is actually singing, although it is probably considered more yelling. My last name is Singer, so I gotta represent it. And the next giveaway we have is for Pandora Celeste, which looks like another really great game. This one looks like a passion project that's been brought to life and has some really unique elements to it, because in this game you actually use the box as the board, and you're actually going to be using the inserts as part of the game because they represent ventilation systems that you'll be able to crawl through as you fight against the aliens that are trying to take over your ship. Players are going to be working together to try and win this game, but the aliens aren't the only thing that the players are going to be going up against, because the ship's computer is designed to protect itself and it doesn't have any regard for the players. The players are going to be racing the clock against that computer before it completely wipes out everything on the ship, including the players. But like I said, you're also going to have to be dealing with the aliens that are appearing every single round. And this one's going to be getting you a deluxe version of the game, and it is also offered nearly worldwide. The only places they won't be able to ship to are Afghanistan, Brazil, Russia, and the Ukraine. To enter this giveaway, just leave a comment down below with the hashtag Pandora, and you can say anything that you want, but if you're looking for something in particular, maybe you could recommend a good movie, TV series, or book that follows the same theme of a bunch of people fighting against some overarching threat on a ship out in space. One that I would really recommend is the series The Expanse. It's a fantastic series, one that I did not expect to like as much as I do. The series covers a whole bunch of different threats, but many of them do take place on a ship, so if you're looking for a good TV series, I definitely recommend checking this one out. But I'm also really interested in any suggestions you might have, because I don't really have anything I'm watching right now, so this giveaway is kind of a selfish one for me because I am looking for recommendations. Good luck in the giveaways, but now let's go ahead and draw the winner for last week's giveaway. And we had a few different giveaways last week. The first one was for a pledge on the new All Play campaign, but then there was a bunch that were running over on the Discord. And if you watch this video quick enough, you can actually still enter in that Discord giveaway. There's 3 different games that we're giving away. All you gotta do is visit the Discord in the description below, head over to the giveaways channel and click the emoji underneath that giveaway. And this is gonna be automatically drawn in about 2 days. But to draw a winner for the rolling board game bag and playmat, we're going to be using this fancy application here. All these extra names down here are bonus entries for my subscribers over on Ko-fi, and if you do like this sort of content, I do appreciate any support that you are able to give. I do all of this content for free, and I don't take any payment from publishers, so it is all of these fantastic folks that make these videos possible. Let's go ahead and grab those comments and draw a winner. And the winner is Nurse Lucy from Ko-fi. Congratulations on the win. I'll reach out to you and let you know that you won yourself a sweet pledge here. And if you did leave a comment on the video, but you didn't win this one, don't leave yet, because I'm going to be doing a bonus giveaway exclusive to the YouTube comments, because this is actually a giveaway that one of the Ko-fi members won, but they wanted me to re-roll this one and give it to someone else, so that's what we're going to do. And this one was for the yield giveaway, so let's go ahead and redraw the winner here. And the winner is, this kind of hurts my head here, but I think it says Cecilia Morning of My Life. So congratulations on the win. Just email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge all sorted out. Thanks so much for tuning in the channel. I'm happy to get another game on your shelf. Like I said in my previous videos, I will be working to try and make these giveaways a little bit more balanced. I just haven't had a whole lot of time to look into it, but I do have some plans. But I just want to thank everyone for tuning in and joining in on the fun on these giveaways and just checking out the channel every week. I do appreciate it, and I hope you get a lot of value out of it as well. But that's everything I have for this week, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.